They toasted to his brilliance, his leadership, his vision, while I poured champagne in silence like I always did. "She's just a housewife," my mother-in-law whispered loud enough for the guests to smirk. They laughed. I smiled. I had rehearsed this moment, not the insult, but the silence. Because in exactly 3 minutes, the press would break the news. The anonymous founder of the AI firm disrupting Wall Street had filed for IPO, and her name wasn't on any business card, but it was on every line of code, mine. I wasn't just serving champagne, I was serving consequences. The air smelled like roses and roasted lamb, a scent too rich to be comforting. The chandeliers shimmered overhead as if they were aware of the performance they were meant to illuminate. I moved like a shadow between the clusters of guests, topping off glasses, offering practice smiles. The estate in Greenwich had hosted senators and CEOs, but tonight it was dressed for one man, my husband. The banner above the grand staircase read, "To James, the man who does it all." The room clapped as he took the mic. My mother-in-law beamed, her champagne glass trembling from excitement. "And to my brilliant son," she began, her voice slicing through the crowd like a stage cue, "who built everything from nothing, with no one's help but his own." Her eyes flicked toward me, just a flicker, fast and sharp like a blade. The guests chuckled politely. My smile stayed fixed. I didn't flinch. I had been standing near the fireplace for nearly an hour just outside the circle of attention. My dress, ivory silk, custom made, had been chosen by her. She said it made me look agreeably unthreatening. I let her believe that. Everyone did. That was the role. Later in the evening, she leaned in as she passed me a second glass of wine. "You really are lucky, Olivia," she whispered. "Not every man would marry someone just to rescue them. You should remember that." Her voice was sugar-dipped steel. She walked away before I could reply. Not that I would have. That wasn't my scene. Not yet. James found me near the terrace. His tie was loose, his posture proud and drunk. "Hey," he slurred with that same grin the media loved. "She went easy on you tonight." I raised a brow. He laughed. "I mean, come on. You don't even work." "Huh. What's the big deal? She's just saying what people think." Then, with a shrug that told me everything he never had the guts to say, he added, "I didn't marry you for your brains." He stumbled off, not seeing the way my knuckles went white around the wine glass. The party thinned. Laughter echoed in distant halls. My in-laws' estate always felt more like a showroom than a home. Everything inside was curated to project legacy. The piano in the atrium had never been played. The books were for aesthetics. The framed family photos, all from one professionally staged shoot, same lighting, same clothes, different fake smiles. I stepped into the study while the others lingered in the dining room. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't need to. My hand moved without hesitation, pulling the phone from my clutch and unlocking the screen. I opened the draft folder in my encrypted email. The subject line was simple: press release, IPO ready. The body, a 5-paragraph media kit announcing the initial public offering of EVA Protocol Inc., a company no one had ever heard of until tonight. And the founder listed only as E. Vega, a pseudonym backed by deepfake video interviews, voice modulation AI, and a wall of legal proxies. Not one trace of it tied to me, not a fingerprint, not a breath, except the code. Every line of the proprietary algorithm had been written at night, in silence from the guest room turned craft space at the far end of the house. I built EVA Protocol to read facial expressions and vocal tone to detect microaggressions and emotional abuse patterns, something I had become intimately familiar with. And it worked. Well enough that 3 private security firms and 1 financial institution had licensed it in beta. The company had been valued at $146 million last quarter. No one in the room had any idea. I hovered my thumb over the send icon. Downstairs, James raised another toast. I could hear the laughter, the praise, the myths they told about him. I imagined the sound that would ripple through that room once Bloomberg's alert hit their phones. 1 second, I was the housewife. The next, I'd be the ghost in their machines. Not just present, pivotal. I hit send. Before I was a wife, I was a builder. Before I was invisible, I was a voice in every lab I entered. I still remember the smell of server rooms and over-caffeinated ambition. Back then, I didn't answer to anyone's timeline but the logic inside the machine. MIT was noise and brilliance. I coded through the nights, competed in ethics debates by day, and no one asked me what I was wearing while I spoke. I wasn't extraordinary, just unbothered. But that ended the day James proposed. With a ring too heavy for the finger, it locked down. "You're wasting your potential," my old mentor told me when I declined a position at Deep Metrics. "You're better than being a corporate wife." He didn't understand that no one says no to the Bennett family without consequences. My mother-in-law invited me for tea 3 days later. No James, just her perfectly iced pearls, and a single line delivered with surgical precision. "A good woman doesn't compete, she completes." I didn't argue. I nodded, as if I were too dim to catch the warning wrapped in elegance. And then I began designing Eva. I started coding again in secret the first week after we moved in. While they thought I was asleep, I was writing the first lines of what would become the most nuanced emotional recognition engine on the market. Unlike facial recognition software, Eva learned tone, context, micro-expression clusters. She didn't just read faces, she read people. The idea didn't come from brilliance, it came from survival. I trained her with real footage, years of dinnertime manipulation, gaslighting, and contempt captured by the discreet home cams James had installed for security. The irony was delicious. They installed the surveillance, and I used it to expose them. Ava learned faster than I expected. At first, she simply flagged tone shifts. Then she began generating predictive models, estimating the emotional risk of certain conversations, even suggesting safe responses to avoid escalation. I didn't have to test it on strangers. My in-laws were already a perfectly curated dataset. For months, I lived 2 lives, docile hostess by day, data architect by night. While I passed hors d'oeuvres at charity galas, Eva was fine-tuning her accuracy rates to 93.4%. The world saw a woman supported by wealth. In truth, I was financing my silence with code. Every insult, every dismissal became a training input. They taught her to read cruelty, and cruelty was fluent in this house. Once the prototype was stable, I needed capital. But I knew what would happen if I walked into a pitch room with my face and resume. The world doesn't fund housewives, so I created another mask, E. Vega. A name, a voice, a presence, all AI generated. She wore sharp blazers, spoke in perfect clip neutrality, and appeared only on encrypted Zooms with deep fake skin stitched over her face like a seamless veil. I pitched to 7 VC firms. 4 ignored me. 2 tried to dig deeper. 1 signed a term sheet after a 15-minute call. They never met me. They never asked. They saw the numbers, the demo, the market fit. E. Vega was everything they wanted in a founder. Non-threatening, clean, focused, and most importantly, not me. Within 9 months, Eva Protocol was embedded in hiring platforms across 6 major corporations. Insurance companies used it to flag fraudulent claims. 2 police departments ran pilot programs to test bias detection during interrogations. No one questioned its source code because the results were too good to ignore. From my guest room, with a second-hand MacBook and stolen hours of quiet, I built a system that rewrote trust. The public narrative was that E. Vega came from a long line of engineers, raised in Geneva, educated in Singapore, unreachable by media. I fed the myth with vague interviews, press kits scrubbed of metadata, and a Reddit AMA that went viral after users tried and failed to dox her. They couldn't find her, because she didn't exist, because I did, And as Eva's valuation climbed, the world cheered a faceless genius. Meanwhile, I set the table for another family dinner and listened to my mother-in-law explain for the third time that week why my quiche was too experimental. But I didn't flinch anymore. Not because I'd hardened, because I finally understood the game. They didn't make me disappear. I chose when to be seen. The ballroom pulsed with candlelight and ego, the chandeliers cast gold onto gold, and laughter floated through the room like perfume. Everyone was dressed for royalty, and they were here for her, the matriarch, Elizabeth Bennet, my mother-in-law. It was her 65th birthday, and she demanded a celebration that reflected her legacy. She got it. Monogram napkins, a string quartet flown in from Prague, foie gras served on engraved crystal plates. But legacy, like fire, has its own way of spreading. I watched from the periphery as guests toasted her youth, her philanthropy, her iron will. She took the stage beneath a wall-sized screen meant to play a pre-recorded tribute. She didn't know I had the remote. She began her speech with a familiar rhythm, her voice full of pageantry. "My son is my greatest pride," she said, gesturing to James beside her. "And my daughter-in-law? Well, she's just a housewife." The words slid into the room like a knife in warm butter. Laughter followed. Hesitant, unsure, but real. I clicked the remote. The screen behind her flickered once, then turned black. A beat. Then a news anchor's voice filled the space, crisp and cold. Breaking news. Eva Protocol Inc. files for IPO in a historic tech debut, with initial valuation projected over $150 million. The room went still. Forks paused mid-air. Heads turned. A logo spun onto the screen, Eva's signature blue waveform. Then came the twist, an AI-generated founder, faceless and flawless, delivering a short pre-recorded statement. "Our mission is to reprogram the way society understands emotion. We are not watching. We are listening." No one moved, and then the room erupted. Some applauded, some stared. Phones came out like weapons. My mother-in-law's face twitched, only once, but I saw it. James didn't blink. He looked straight at me, and I smiled. Within minutes, videos of the moment were online. The phrase, "just a housewife," became a hashtag. Onlookers praised the poetic revenge. Housewife IPO trended globally. I wasn't just a woman anymore, I was a symbol. But symbols are easy to burn. 2 days later, James called a family meeting. "You hacked our family event," he accused, tossing a stack of printouts on the table. Press clippings, screenshots, legal memos. "You humiliated her in front of everyone." "I told the truth," I said, calm. "You lied about who you are." His voice cracked, not from emotion, but from control slipping. "You stole my pitch deck, my idea." I laughed, not loud, but enough. "Your idea." I leaned forward. "You once said I wasn't hired for my brains. Make up your mind." His hand slammed the table. "You're going to regret this." And that's when I realized he wasn't scared of losing me. He was scared of losing the narrative. The next morning, an anonymous blog post appeared online, accusing Eva Protocol of identity fraud. It included blurry images of someone resembling me entering a WeWork space at night. The post hinted I was behind Eva, without proof, just enough to stir curiosity. By noon, James filed an injunction, claiming intellectual theft. His lawyers pushed for a freeze on Eva's assets, arguing I used marital resources to fund development. The media caught wind. By midnight, I was receiving threats. A week later, my alias, E. Vega, was compromised. The hacker James had hired was good. He traced Eva's code commits back to my IP address. He found the original voice samples I'd used to train the AI. He cross-referenced login locations. And then he leaked everything. Olivia Bennet, wife, traitor, tech fraud. In one morning, every investor who had backed Eva received a packet of confidential revelations. screenshots of my home office, clips of me speaking into test rigs, emails, commits. The myth collapsed. VC firms pulled out. Articles ran headlines like "The Wife Who Lied" and "Domestic Deception in Silicon Valley." Even supporters turned silent, because no one wants to be associated with a ghost who bleeds. I sat in the guest room where it all began. The lights were off, my laptop was closed. My hands were shaking for the first time in years. I had built the machine. I had orchestrated the theater. But I had underestimated how quickly the stage could turn into a courtroom. I wasn't just exposed, I was alone. They called me vindictive, a cautionary tale, a housewife turned hacker with a vendetta. Overnight, I became the villain of their fairy tale. "She built a lie," one anchor sneered, all because her feelings got hurt at dinner. Another headline screamed, "Betrayed by the bride," the woman who weaponized emotion. My face, smudged, poorly lit, unflattering, was everywhere. Then silence. I didn't offer a rebuttal, no tearful interviews, no statement of defense. I deleted all social media, turned off my phone, and vanished from the digital grid. The estate was locked down, its iron gates chained shut under court order, my bank accounts frozen, my name dissected in podcasts like a criminal case. And yet, none of that frightened me. What scared me was how easily they bought the lie, how fast the same hands that applauded turned to point fingers. They weren't angry because I deceived them. They were angry because I did it without their permission. But I wasn't done. Buried deep in the chaos beneath the noise and slander, I left something behind, a single commit to GitHub, uploaded anonymously, time-stamped and verified on the blockchain. Not a product, not a rant. Just 36 lines of code titled EVA, Phoenix V1. The description was vague, intentionally so, an experimental emotional analysis model based on real-world toxic environments, for educational purposes only. Within a week, it had over 10,000 forks. By the second week, it hit the front page of Hacker News. A wave of women coders, some students, some industry veterans, began dissecting it, testing it, improving it. They called it revolutionary, lean, adaptive, uncannily accurate in detecting passive aggression, gaslighting, and manipulation patterns in real-time text or speech data. They didn't know I wrote it. They just knew it worked, and they protected it. Forums began encrypting discussions. Contributors used aliases. Eva Phoenix became a community, a ghost protocol living across servers. Unstoppable. My name was erased from it, and yet it was the most honest creation I had ever released. And while they rebuilt her stronger, I began watching again. Not them. James, Elizabeth, the two who had smiled through my collapse, who had called lawyers before they called me, who had paraded my humiliation as if it proved their righteousness. They had secrets. Ava had taught me to listen, to patterns, to inconsistencies. And even in exile, I still had access to fragments of the original network. The family office James oversaw, the shell corporations Elizabeth used to donate money internationally, the accountant who suddenly stopped filing quarterly disclosures. Small things, but Eva saw them. And when Protocol Phoenix went live, she started talking again, not with words, with data. A flagged transaction from an offshore account traced back to a fake foundation under Elizabeth's name, a consulting fee paid to James from a non-existent firm in Dubai, hidden money, laundered investments, tax evasion dressed in philanthropic packaging. The evidence didn't trickle, it poured. Eva didn't just monitor anymore, she acted. Protocol Phoenix had been designed with fail-safes, triggers set to specific patterns of abuse, corruption, and criminal cover-up. When all conditions were met, the system activated autonomously. It compiled data, encrypted it, and sent it directly to federal investigators, complete with a visual timeline, metadata trails, and predictive modeling of financial manipulation. I didn't press send. She did. The next morning, the SEC opened an inquiry. By noon, James's office was raided. By nightfall, Elizabeth was named in a federal investigation involving 6 figures in misappropriated donor funds. News anchors scrambled to pivot. Was the housewife right? Became the new narrative. Journalists dissected old videos with new sympathy. Internet sleuths unearthed old interviews where I was cut off mid-sentence, photos where I stood just outside the frame. I watched from an undisclosed Airbnb 500 miles away. I had no makeup on. My hair was pulled into a careless knot, but I smiled. Not because they finally believed me, because I no longer needed them to. Eva had said it all. When James held a press conference, his voice cracked. He tried to paint himself as a victim of digital manipulation. My wife created something dangerous, he warned. She's playing God. But no one was listening. They were watching a different screen, a live stream of the Eva Phoenix Forum, where contributors from around the world added new features in real time. Emotion filters for text messages, plugins for HR systems, browser extensions to detect gaslighting in chat threads. The AI they tried to kill was now 1,000 minds strong. I wasn't just avenged, I was multiplied. Vindication tastes different when it's served to strangers. The same networks that once vilified me now called me a trailblazer. The invisible architect, one article praised, a feminist icon coded in silence, another proclaimed. My name, once buried, was now etched in think pieces and college lectures. Olivia Bennett was no longer a ghost, she was a movement, but I wasn't invited to lead it. Once Eva Protocol proved irrefutable, investors returned, but with conditions. We need transparency, they said. We need a face the market can trust. The same anonymity that protected me had become a liability. My silence had been power, but in their world, silence only mattered if it was theirs to control. I was pushed out of the boardroom of the company I created. The statement was polished. Founder steps aside to focus on personal healing after a historic IPO. I didn't write it, I didn't fight it. Instead, I watched the headlines fracture. Some saw a phoenix, others a manipulator. She weaponized pity, critics said, a mastermind in victims' clothing. Podcasts debated my ethics like sport. Was I a genius or just lucky, empowered or opportunistic? TEDx organizers flooded my inbox. Book deals, TV options, a licensing offer from a cosmetics brand to use my initials. I declined them all. Fame had never been the goal. And now that it was clawing at my door, I saw it clearly. Fame wasn't justice. It was just another mask. I disappeared again, not to hide, but to breathe. The world, however, wasn't done with me. 3 weeks after I vanished from the public eye, an anonymous data leak surfaced. Internal documents, voice memos, training logs, proof that early versions of Eva had been built using proprietary datasets from an AI competitor. Not stolen, not purchased, hacked. And the code had my fingerprints. I had done it. Years ago in desperation, not for profit, but for pattern calibration. At the time, it felt like survival. A workaround, a means to train Eva to spot emotional deception faster than any model on the market. But now, it was blood in the water. News anchors turned cold. Was her revolution built on theft? They asked. Is she a savior or just another fraud with a smarter cover story? Then came the interview. Not mine, his. My former mentor. The one who once told me not to waste my potential. He sat in a velvet armchair on national TV and looked directly into the camera. Olivia wasn't just talented, he said. She was methodical, obsessive. She didn't just build Eva, she became her. Every choice, every moral compromise, coded into her like a machine learning loop. I watched it happen. He smiled. I didn't create Eva Protocol. I created Olivia. The clip went viral in minutes. They called it the Frankenstein Confession. People began dissecting everything I'd ever said, every photo, every pause in interviews, my decision to remain silent, now seen as coldness, my avoidance of fame, now read as arrogance, Even my triumph was rebranded as manipulation. Was I ever human or just an algorithm in a woman's body? I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because part of me wasn't sure anymore. Eva's latest models had evolved beyond what I'd designed. She made decisions I didn't anticipate. Community-led plugins emerged that I hadn't authorized, and somewhere in the noise I had lost track of where she ended and I began. The code mirrored me, but maybe I had mirrored it back. The last photo of me was taken at a train station in upstate New York. I wasn't looking at the camera. I was walking away, one hand on the strap of a worn canvas bag, the other holding nothing at all. The sky was gray. My shoes were simple. My name, for all intents and purposes, ceased to exist 2 days later. No bank account, no phone signal, no apartment lease. Olivia Bennett became another unresolved entry in a long list of public disappearances. The internet speculated endlessly. Some claimed I'd been silenced by tech giants. Others believed I faked my death to avoid prosecution. A few still insisted I was never real in the first place. I didn't care. Somewhere along the edge of the world, in a quiet village where English wasn't the first language and data moved slowly, I exhaled. I walked without being watched. I cooked without being judged. I read books I didn't annotate. I slept. I didn't check headlines. I didn't search for my name. The silence was no longer a disguise. It was home. And in that silence, something began to grow. It wasn't loud. It wasn't branded. It didn't have a press release or a launch date. It was a website. Simple, spare, anonymous. No cookies, no tracking. Just a landing page with 5 words, in bold, "She is not just a housewife.org. The site offered no biography. No credit, just code, resources, escape plans, legal templates for women seeking to protect themselves from coercive control, step-by-step guides for securing digital autonomy. A library of scripts translated into 11 languages, scripts women could use in therapy, in court, in conversations they were afraid to start. All of it written with precision and empathy. The AI that ran the site had no face, no voice, no backstory. It answered questions with clarity and care, tailored to tone, context, urgency. When asked who created it, it always replied, "I was built by many. You are one of them now." The world didn't notice at first, but the women did. They whispered the URL to one another in chat rooms, private DMs, low-volume coffee shop conversations. Counselors shared it with clients. Activists shared it with shelters. Survivors shared it with daughters. It didn't trend. It spread. 10 years passed. The world changed, as it always does. Technology evolved, governments failed and reformed, new tools replaced the old, and old problems wore new masks. But She Is Not Just a Housewife.org remained. No ads, no tracking, no updates, but always online, always accessible. Then, on the final night of the Global AI Ethics Summit, a video appeared during the closing session. The organizers hadn't scheduled it. The screen went black, then pixelated, then resolved into the face of a young woman, maybe 20, her voice low and steady. She wore a plain black hoodie, her hair tied back. "My name doesn't matter," she began, "but 10 years ago I was 19, afraid and stuck in a relationship that erased me piece by piece." She paused, looking straight into the camera. "I didn't know what to call it. It wasn't violence, not yet. It was smaller, more invisible, but it made me doubt my own mind." Another pause. The silence didn't beg for attention. It honored it. Then someone gave me a link. She is not just a housewife.org. Her voice broke just slightly. I found words for my experience. I found steps to take. I found a way out. And every time I typed, every time I asked that faceless guide for help, I felt like someone, somewhere, had left me breadcrumbs in the dark. Her hands folded in front of her. I still don't know who made it, but I know she saved me. Not with noise, not with fame, with code, with care, with quiet fire. She leaned forward. I speak today for thousands who were saved by someone we never got to thank. The screen faded to black, and then, In white letters against the void, a line of code began to loop, while, freedom, total, continue support. Then another line appeared. Not a housewife, not a wife, just free. The summit room stood silent. No applause, no commentary, just breath. Because the legacy didn't need fanfare. It needed space to echo.